Alright, welcome to another critiquing video. This is Toby.
And this is Christina.
And we're going to be meandering through the Digital Photo Rec Flickr group. We're up to 947 photos. That's amazing. And so many photos in here that are just really beautiful, fun moments, just a huge variety. And I'm a little humbled by some of the stuff that you all have uploaded. So thank you for uploading. We're going to roll through a fair number, obviously not 1,000, maybe not even 10% of 1,000. But we'll be back and hopefully doing this weekly now. And I'll be in here a little bit more often, leaving some comments and messages from time to time as well. So even if it doesn't get picked up in a video critique, I may leave a comment on it. And feel free to leave a comment on each other's images as well. It'd be nice to build this up as a nice little community of folks. And, you know, I was thinking about one of the first images that I uploaded to a critique site, probably I think it was around 2005 when I first got my DSLR Rebel XT 50mm f1.8, which is on sale for right now, you know, $99.
I didn't know that.
Yep. I thought it was a great picture, and I'm still happy with the moment it captures of a cute little kid, but looking back on it, and the very first comments from everybody was, this white balance is terrible, and it was not a nice white balance. It was very, very yellow. Alright, so let's dive right in and talk about Jeff Martin's snowy owl picture. Nice. Wow. I mean, beautiful bird. Really cool detail. You got this with the 55 to 250 on a T4i. Pretty snazzy.
Great picture. I like it.
I like it a lot. Yep. And you know, I think sometimes, or fairly often, we're not fans of, and you'll hear us say this in some of these other images, of centering, dead centering your subject. But it certainly works just fine here. And this grass adds nice texture around the snowy owl. And he's sitting on a kill, so I wonder what he's eating. Some little furry mammal.
I would have put the owl a little bit, I would have cropped this a little and put the owl more to the left. There's a big area right here that kind of pulls your eye away from the owl.
In the top left.
Yeah, so I would have just cropped a little bit, and then that would just keep the focus right on this guy. But it's an amazing picture. I'm so jealous.
Very cool.
Jeff saw an owl and captured it. It was so close.
Yep. One of the things, if you have a subject gazing in a direction in your photo that's not directly at the camera, but more left or right, is to put them opposite of their gaze. So if they're looking to the right, put them on the left so they're looking into the picture and kind of looking into that space, and usually it feels a little bit nicer and balances the image a little bit nicer.
Mm-hmm.
Nice shot, Jeff. Alright, I picked this one here from Steve Stairs, the Casa Nida in Las Vegas, New Mexico. Wait, New Mexico, not Las Vegas, Nevada. Interesting. This grabbed me. I mean, this was just a perfectly composed, cool image. Cool both in white balance and cool in the way it looks. You got this nice repeating lines here of the stairs. The texture of the wood works for me. I don't know if I'm crazy about the blue hue or the blue cast, but I think it works for this and maybe brings out the texture in the wood a little bit more. I think a pure black and white would be just fine too.
Yeah, I almost wonder, I mean, I love this picture for all the reasons that you just mentioned, and I don't think I really have anything, any constructive criticism to provide other than maybe I think because of the subject matter, which seems to be, I don't know, I want to say that this picture looks cold, and I feel like the cyanotype processing is probably more appropriate for like a blue scene, you know, like a colder scene. Maybe a sepia might be a little bit more appropriate, but I mean, it's just, I don't know. I like it too. I do think it. I feel like it works. So and I love. It's perfectly composed. I think I think you could have taken this part out, this part where my eye goes back to this a lot.
Kind of that big black
yeah,
space?
Like a little tweak. No, just this little spot right here.
A little bit of tape or something.
Yeah.
Mm.
My eye keeps going back to that.
Okay.
So I would have just taken that out in Photoshop, but that's about it. I mean, it's great. Yeah.
You know, and a quick, when coloring photos like this and doing cyanotype or the cool kind of cool blue hue or sepia, one thing that's kind of neat, I often do, and I think you do this as well sometimes, is to present the two different options to somebody in your house. Say, hey, which one do you like better? Have them look at it real quick and give you a judgment call, because usually what they pick is what most people out there are going to pick. One might speak to them more than another.
Sure, but I still think that you should go with your gut and what you like, because you created the picture, and ultimately you should have a final decision on what it looks like.
It's true, I should say.
It's very subjective.
Yep. If you're having trouble deciding which one you like best, it's pretty easy, I think, to work on an image for a long period of time and then you really kind of lose track of what the subject was or what the best look was for the image, and getting somebody to check in on you. It's good. Nice, Steve. Thank you. All right, this one from Anthony. I picked this. I love the framing. She's framed on this road so really, really nicely. It's great, and we're nice and close. A couple things, though, that could make this picture much better, in my opinion. One, our coloring is a little off. A little bit of a bluish-greenish hue to it. And you shot it wide open, wide open. You shot it wide angled at 18 millimeters, and her head's getting just a little bit big there, and the helmet on top kind of accentuates that as well. And if you had taken a step or two back and zoomed in a little bit, her proportions would be just a little bit nicer and keep that framing. So again, I really like where you put her. And I'm not sure if that was deliberate or just snapped it and it worked out really nicely. But great on that. Color and stepping back and zooming just a little bit. I know when I shoot with you, Christina, I don't want to say I get in trouble, but I get a talking to if I'm shooting people wider than 50 millimeters. You really, especially close up. If it's a big group of people standing further away, sure, go wide to get that whole group in there. But even then, you should really take a few steps back and zoom with the lens if you're using a lens that zooms.
So actually, I'm going to go against everything that I tell you and disagree a little bit. But I say a little bit because I don't see a lot of distortion because of the crop factor. Her head, I think, I don't see any disproportionate, Maybe the left handlebar is a little bit larger than it might have been, but in terms of her body and her face and her helmet and her head, I think the proportions are right. I will say that if you had stepped back and then zoomed in, that a lot of the distracting elements in the background, for example, the stop sign, all those cars, the light, or the
power lines.
The power lines, the tree, and all those things may have been a little, or maybe a little bit less noticeable, which might keep the focus more on her expression and her face, which are great. I mean, I think this is a great, great portrait of her. So yeah, I may have backed up a little bit and then zoomed in a little bit more. However, there's not always time to do that. So, you may have just made the best call or that you could at the right time. So
remember, we're not necessarily saying what you should have done. We're just offering up, and people have asked for this, what you could have done that maybe would have made this image stronger.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, the color. And this is something that you could still, go back and probably redo, is her face looks a little bit red and pink to me. And the sky looks a little bit too saturated. And so, yeah, I would try to keep the colors on the skin tones as realistic as you can. That's just my personal preference. I feel like I like to keep skin tones true to life, but otherwise it's a great portrait.
Yeah. One other thing I'm realizing as I'm looking over at the metadata here, because you shot this at 18, you had the aperture available to you of f3.5, which would be another way to kind of separate your subject from the background by making your depth of field much more shallow, and a lot of those background objects would be softer and a little bit less distracting in that case as well.
Hey, another successful thing is that the back of the girl's subject, or I'm sorry, the sun is to the back of the girl, which is great because a lot of people take portraits of, you know, their subjects facing the sun, which causes them to squint, but this actually creates a nice little rim light on the edges of her arms and on the back of her head, which does help to separate her from the background. So yeah, so good job for, you know, looking for that. And
yep, you can see that nice light right around here.
Yeah,
It says, yep, very nice. Thank you, Anthony. We want to be here.
yeah.
Well, I'm not sure where this is, but this looks like one of those pictures that is Windows 95 wallpaper. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. This is a beautiful image. Colors are nice.
The colors are amazing.
I think, you know, you may have boosted it a little bit, or maybe, yeah, the shadows of these palms here, or the shade area of the palms up in them, is nice and bright. So I think a little bit of lightening has been done there, but just a really nice image.
Yeah.
Not sure what else to say
Great
about
stuff.
it. Yep.
I may have taken this out, maybe.
Yeah.
This thing. I
Yep.
don't think it really adds anything to the image, but otherwise, again, these are just really small tweaks that don't make, I mean, actually they do make a big difference, but, you know, they're just, it doesn't make it a bad photo to not get rid of it. So
Nice.
just little things to watch for.
Nice dunk. Alright, this is Lawrence. And I don't know, I picked this because I like the lighting, but I'm really not a fan of the coloring. I think, and this is similar to the stair step that we saw in Las Vegas, New Mexico, with the blue type, and here we have more of a sepia tone.
But with a cyanotype in the shadows.
With the style, we're getting some bluish in the
Yeah.
shadows. Yeah, so I just don't think it works very well. And I'd like to either see a nice clean black and white, or just color. I'd be
Yeah.
interested to see what this looked like in color, because the lighting is really interesting on this.
The lighting is interesting. I think that to take the lighting a step further, I may have done a little rim light to separate the doll from the background.
Mm-hmm.
So just add a little pop of light somehow, either with a reflector, which doesn't have to be like, you don't have to go out and buy a reflector, just any white reflective
a towel.
surface. Yeah, a towel, a book, yeah.
Anything that's going to be able to bounce a little light back.
Yeah, just so that she doesn't fall into the background, you know, just like floating in the background. You know, you can still keep the background black, but you should separate your subject from the background.
Yeah. And Lawrence, I'm noticing that you shot this at f/18, which that aperture is really getting up there, and is likely or possibly going to start suffering some negative image quality from diffraction. And really, I don't, shooting at a focal length of 22 millimeters, I really don't think you need to go at that high. Probably f12 would have been plenty, maybe even f8 to get your depth of field here.
Yeah.
And shooting at 10 seconds too. So, but maybe you're removing light. Maybe you're removing light with a flashlight, and so that's why you needed that longer period of time. So I'm not quite sure how you created this. I'd love to have you comment and
Tell
talk a
us
little bit
how.
about how you made it, because again, I like the lighting.
Yeah, tell us how you made this.
Yep, good. All right, thanks, Lawrence.
So I picked this image because I liked it and I wish that I was there. It's a cool location. And I think the composition is very strong. Yeah, I mean, it's a wide angle shot. At 5.9, it's an ultra wide angle, it seems.
A shot with a point and shoot.
Yeah, but still, I mean, you can see a little bit of the distortion from a wide angle, which actually I think works really, really well with this picture. I like the distortion a lot. I think that, you know, the architectural lines kind of, or the lines from here lead you back to this area, which to me is kind of the main focus, but then, you know, then your eye jumps back and forth from all of these things, and there's a sense of scale. Like, these buildings are obviously really, really huge, and you can see the people and how small they are compared to it. So I just, it's a really great photo. And it seems like it was shot late in the afternoon, because this is kind of, the light's very warm, and, you know, the shadows of from the sun are, you know, kind of at an angle. So yeah, it's cool. I love it. Great photo.
Can you try to clear your throat less often? Right into the thing. I really like it too. I think a tendency of a lot of people who would arrive at a place like this, the Taj Mahal, would be to kind of walk on the other side of this reddish building and take a straight-on shot. And that would be an interesting or a nice shot as well. But this is a little bit of a tease, because you have just part of the Taj Mahal, and enough that it's really grabs your attention, sticking, and you want to kind of, I want to move into this image and move around this building and see the rest of it's there. And I think Christina's point about the scale is really important. These people, especially the ones up close, look tiny, and you can see the people up around the Taj Mahal itself are just little ants. So really nice image, Dan. All right, from being around the Taj Mahal to being under the water and staring straight at a lionfish. So this is from Radiver, or Radiver, and this is a cool shot as well. Mostly because it's an underwater picture and we don't have a lot. In case you've got an underwater housing for your Canon 60D and a 10 to 17 millimeter lens. I'm not sure what lens that is even. So I'd love to hear from you what lens that is actually. You can go
and
Google
how
it in a minute.
Close were you to this?
Well, at 15
feature,
millimeters, you're pretty close.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to know. I want to know more about this picture too. So tell us more about it.
But it's I like where the lionfish is framed and kind of the coral up above it there.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's a nice shot.
I like the expression. I know it's kind of silly to say, but the lionfish's expression is just really interesting. It just, like, he caught, or, you know, you caught his eye almost. So I find that to be very interesting. Great shot.
Nice. Thanks. All right. This shot caught my eye earlier today when I was starting to glance through. And as we were talking about in the last podcast, what aspect ratio to shoot at, and you mentioned, Christina, you mentioned that you really like the really wide, and I said 16 by 9, and you said no, even wider, and I said I don't think that's such a thing, and then people quickly pointed out that it is very much a thing. 21 by 9. Is that what they said? 21 by 9?
I believe so.
I believe so too. And actually, I don't even know if this is the 21 by 9.
But it's an ultra-wide.
But it is an ultra-wide shot.
Or not ultra-wide, but it's a panoramic shot.
A panoramic shot, yep. Taken with the 18 to 55 at 55 millimeters, which makes me think that it is a stitched panorama or something.
No, I mean, I think that panoramas...
It's 2 stitch shots.
Oh, okay.
It says it right there.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
Yep.
Because oftentimes...
Whoa.
Oops. So... Oftentimes, when you shoot an image and then you crop it in such a way, in a you know, long aspect ratio, like a 21 by 9, it looks like you shot a wide angle sometimes, or it can have the effect of, you know, a wide angle shot. So that's kind of why I thought that it might have been, but obviously this is 2 images, but.
The 2 images
Very
really
cool.
nicely composed. The little house and the reflection, or little shack, over on the right-hand side, just works really nicely.
Yes.
I like it.
Very cool.
Nice. F8, sweet spot of the lens. Looks very good. Thanks, Ed.
Okay, so I picked this picture because to me, I think, it's kind of really hard to see the subject. There's so much going on. So, while the subject matter might be really interesting, it's kind of hard to pick out because my eyes are distracted by all of the other elements that, like this highlight right here from the sun, all of these things, this little blurry thing over here on the left, so many things. I think, by getting just a tiny bit closer and maybe stopping down a little bit more, or not stopping down, but opening your aperture a little bit wider, maybe not, anything beyond 2.0, but just a little bit more, and getting closer, definitely getting closer. You could have separated the action and your subject from the background. Another thing that could have been done is to photograph it, a little bit differently. So maybe get in really close and, tell more of an intimate story about what's happening, as opposed to trying to capture everything. Because it seems like you're trying to capture the snow and, and kind of the excitement and people hanging out in the snow. But it's just really distracting.
Yeah. This is one of those pictures where, what's your subject? If I looked at this scene without a camera and said I'm about to take a picture, I think what I would capture is this cute little girl and her snowman that she is either building or inspecting. Get in close to that and really try to capture that. Take another picture further back that does capture this kind of evening light and snow on these I can't remember what kind of trees these are right now, but another picture that captures that. But don't try to do one picture that has multiple subjects, because then as Christina just took time saying, we end up getting lost in the picture and not really seeing what there is, what the focus is. Another thing is you were shooting pretty wide open, f2.8. But at this distance, that really does not give you a shallow depth of field. You really only get that shallow depth of field as you move closer. And so, again, moving closer would have cut out a lot of this distracting background. This person's got a bright red jacket right in line with the little girl. There's people over here on a sled or a bench. Grabs my attention as well. This green thing here. So, yeah, there's a lot of distracting elements that need to be narrowed down and narrowed out. And I think would be a better image. But thank you, Simeon. Matteo, this is a really cool shot. Matteo, 30 seconds, Italy. We can see that we get the softness in the sky from that 30 seconds. The clouds are moving. We've got really nice light trails from the cars down on the road below. I think the exposure here is really balanced nicely in these dark hillsides coming down into this populated lights. This image works quite nicely. I think the only thing that maybe is a little distracting is these branches that I think were probably really close by, that are kind of sticking up and looking like giganto branches, just because they're so close. Maybe if you could have gotten a little bit higher to get rid of those, or if it's even possible, you could have pulled them out of the way, held them down. Don't break branches and destroy nature in order to get a shot. But if you could have possibly done that, but that's fairly minor, and you possibly could have taken those out in post-processing as well. I don't know how much it would have been worth it, though.
Yeah, I don't really have that much more to add. I actually originally was thinking that the branches sort of balance out all of the stuff that's going on over here, because there's a lot less going on. I mean, there's the ripples and there's texture, but there's a lot more going on this side of the picture. But I think you're right. I think that the photo would be a lot stronger if these branches weren't there. But overall, it's a really, really, really interesting picture, and it's very cool. I love the contrast of the tungsten with the blue of the, dusk, and it's just really cool.
At this size, it looks sharp enough, but this might be one of those spots where going up to f7.1, f8, you may have gotten just slightly better results.
Oh, and here's another tip about closing down your aperture a little bit. So if you were shooting at like 8, all of these really bright spots, you can see that they're you can see these little starburst shapes. If you stop down a little bit more, so if you close your aperture to like f8 or something a little bit higher, the starbursts become a lot more noticeable. And that can be, you may not like that, but it can look really cool sometimes. So
thank you, Mateo. It's fun. We're like traveling all over the world and looking through these pictures. Oh, another one by Simeon. Oh, we picked more than one.
Oh, well. Guess who picked that one? Me. Because I love pets.
Why don't you whisper that?
I love pets.
I think this is a nice picture because it illustrates the fact that you don't always have to have your subject fill the frame to have a strong image. It works well here. Here's this cute little kitty face down here in the bottom corner. We have all of this negative space, but it works.
Yep. Lots of negative space. I like the negative space. I was going to talk about that. I think if I were to suggest any improvements, I would just kind of get rid of this.
That little bit of, yep.
Yeah, just that. But otherwise, it's a great shot.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Thank you, Simeon.
Okay, so I picked this one because of the colors. I think it's a really great portrait of this woman. And, I think the focus is done correctly. It's sharp. It's close enough that, it seems like there might be distracting elements in the background, but they're not that distracting because you could go as far as to say, like, these lines pull your eye away from here. But overall, there's enough separation that she's the main focus of the image. But her face is really pink. And I think that, this was probably shot, again, at sunset because there's a slight warmth in the colors. But I think that, her face doesn't look normal. Like, it doesn't look very realistic. And, it seems like if you were to correct it and add a little bit of yellow, it would make much stronger, much nicer, more, I don't know, I guess timeless, you could say, portrait. Because this kind of looks just overly saturated almost. And I don't think that was the original intention. So just play around with the white balance, make sure the skin tones are appropriate, or not appropriate, but they're more realistic.
Accurate.
Accurate, yes. Accurate's the right word. And that's it.
Nice. That's a very nice picture. To add a little bit more separation, you could back up just a little bit and then go all the way to 1. Oh, yeah, actually, you're at 102. Sorry, I was thinking this was a 120. No, yeah, it's good. Again, I really like the composition. I don't have anything to add other than get that skin to a more accurate skin tone picture, but really nice expressive eyes looking right at the camera. Works well. Thank you, Javier. Lawrence, long exposure with the 70D. I love the colors in the sky. I love the road leading up to this oak tree. I think it's an oak tree. Let's pretend it is. The shape of that tree, really, really cool. The only thing I'm not happy with is you are starting to get the stars to move. Not enough to be interesting and have real star trails, but just enough so that they don't look like nice clean pinpoints of light. There is the 650 rule, which means you got to take your focal length. 650 divided by your focal length gives you the shortest amount of time, the longest amount of time you can take an exposure for before you're going to start to get movement in the stars. And the 50 is difficult because that is a fairly long focal length, and then you have to multiply it by the crop factor. So we have some technicalities to figure out here, but I think you're going to end up being down somewhere around 20 seconds. You should be able to do that math. And I think you even actually need to do, well, the crop factor 5, 6, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but love the composition. Love the sky colors. I think we either have some sunset or light pollution. I'm not sure what it's from, but the end result is really, I believe, pretty gradient in the sky. Like the framing, and just wish the stars wore nice little pinpoints. You could do a shorter exposure and higher ISO because you are at just 100, and with the 70D you could easily go up to 1250 to get your shorter exposure if you needed to. Anything to add?
I kind of like the road a lot. I think it kind of looks like a painting just because it's just like a chiaroscuro almost. It's just very, very...
Like a what?
Chiaroscuro, which is the... it's an old style of painting. And yeah, just the transition from light to dark is very gradual and very cool. And I'm not loving the composition. I think that this could be either centered or more off to the side. It's just kind of not.
The tree?
Yeah, the tree.
Okay.
It's not either or. So either center it or move it to either side
to the
more.
edge. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. But otherwise, yep, I agree with everything else you said.
Nice, Lawrence. Grand Oak. Oh, look, it's titled Grand Oak, so we're going to consider that an oak tree. And, I might take a few moments and edit out these wires. And, we've had discussions before about how much editing, how much removal is too much, and really I think that's up to you. But I think it would be fine to take those out. They don't add anything to the image. All right. Now we've in the last critique that was part of the podcast 2 weeks ago, we reviewed some images by this gentleman. This is a cool image, but I'm really not a fan of the color. I think that the boy looks not healthy with this coloring, and I would be inclined to go black and white, although then you lose the fun color in the bubbles. So maybe, well, I'm not a fan of selective coloring, so I'm not going to suggest selective coloring.
But you were about to.
I was about to. But the first thing I notice about this is this boy's, the color of his skin and his hand, and it just doesn't look healthy to me, and that distracts from what I think is a really neat image and captured a really neat moment of as these bubbles are coming out.
Yep.
Okay. Cool old camera.
So there's some interesting stuff going on in this picture. For one, I want to know what this is, because this isn't, so this part right here, this looks like it's like a spotlight almost. Like, what's the opposite of a spotlight? Because there's the perfect circle, but it's actually a shadow. So I don't know where that's coming from. Like, this camera wouldn't have cast such a perfectly circular or spherical shadow.
What if they did some softening in the background?
What do you mean some softening?
Well, maybe a radial blur or a Gaussian blur in Photoshop.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Well, anyway, that just kind of stands out to me as being a little strange. And then it almost seems like the camera is photoshopped or something, or like, yeah, that's interesting. Although you can see a white border right here. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit of paint on the old box.
Huh.
Our light source is definitely off on the right because you can see our shadow coming across.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Okay, and then the other thing that's kind of interesting or funny about this picture is this. Which I think, it kind of does balance the picture out, because you've got this, very right, weighted heavily on the right, this composition. and then you have this object that kind of balances it out, but the object is not actually relevant to the subject of the image, so it doesn't seem like it should be there. So yeah, so I'm not sure about this. And also it's kind of almost cut out at the bottom, so it doesn't even seem like it was on purpose that it was put here. You know, like there's not enough space at the bottom to kind of say that, you know, it was put there on purpose. So it may have been, but it's just, so yeah, so I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this.
I think the exposure, the texture of this image I like a lot. But my first thought is, I think the camera's supposed to be the subject, but I keep getting distracted by this, you know, candle holder or some sort over there on the left, and I don't necessarily feel that it balances the image because it is more distracting and more of an unknown than something that works.
Right. What I'm saying is that I think it was meant to, or it's there as a way to balance the image, but it doesn't really actually balance it. And then the other thing that I wanted to say about this is, actually, I don't remember. I totally lost my train of thought, and I forgot. Yep. Forgot.
Okay.
Totally forgot.
Moving on. All right. We have a pooch. Now, you, Yanni, I think that's how you say that.
I think it's Yoni.
Yoni had uploaded a handful of pictures of this dog, and this was the one that stood out to both of us as being the strongest of the bunch, although there were others that were quite good and cute as well. But really like this black and white, and just works nicely. This is one of those good examples of the dog is gazing to its left or to the camera right into the image, and so the extra space or the negative space has been left over to the right, and that works out nicely.
I would have, yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I like it for those reasons too. I like that there's a little rim light separating, you know, this part of the face from the sort of darkish background. I kind of would like to see this lightened a little bit,
yeah.
Or maybe it's my position. Maybe I'm too low on the screen. Yeah, I think it's just where I am.
No, it could be lightened a little bit.
Well, it could be lightened a little bit. Yeah, and just to see his eyes a little bit better. And then I would get rid of this also.
A little bit of gray.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be
cloud
there.
or something. Yeah.
Something like that.
Okay.
But it's a great, great, great photo.
Mm-hmm. I love the grass down in the front too. Really nice, sharp.
Yeah.
In that you can see that we're working with a nice narrow depth of field here, the 85.
85.
It's a nice focal length, even on a crop sensor, unless you're inside. Then you're going to find yourself up against the wall. All right, so digital canvas here, you know, it is right up front and calls this the beach of color, and was playing around with some different colors and editing pictures. But similar to the boy with the bubble, this looks like a sickly beach to me because of the colors. And it's a nice scene, I think, and a nice composition, but I am not a fan of the coloring of this, where they ended up with in the colors.
I'm conflicted because I like the colors, but I don't know that I like the colors on this particular image.
Mm-hmm.
I like the colors, like if they were a watercolor on on a painting. But yeah, they do look a little unrealistic here.
Yeah.
I also don't really love the composition all that much. I feel like there's way too much foreground and not enough background. So I would... A lot of
empty space here.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I would maybe move, shoot up a little bit higher, more into the sky. Although I understand that, you're kind of trying to get the motion of the waves. So yeah, I'm not really sure what you could have done.
Mm-hmm. I see that you say that you were shooting with a circular polarizer, and you're trying to go for a longer exposure, which does kind of smooth this beachy out here, which I do like. Which is nice, and shooting at f/25, which you said, and I'm surprised that you did find this to be true, that as sharp the images were, that sharp all the way up to f/25, you thought some diffraction would come in, and I would expect some as well. So it really is, to some degree, lens dependent. But yeah, f/25 is a very, very small aperture. That's what you need to get those longer times if you're shooting during brighter parts of the day for long images.
Yep.
Okay.
So I picked this image because it's an image from a wedding and it's relevant to me and what I do. And I think that my criticism of this image is that I would have picked a dark vignette as opposed to a white vignette.
And so this is a vignette referring to kind of this, coloring around the edge.
Yes.
Lightening in this case, and sometimes it's darkening. You can get a natural vignette with a lens where your edges are darker.
So the purpose of a vignette is to bring your attention more to the center of the image or to the subject, and kind of, bring attention away from the edge, from distracting elements that might be around the edge. So I think, our eyes tend to go to the brighter parts of an image. So I would think that a bright vignette does the opposite of what a dark vignette is intended to do. It actually brings your eye more, it brings your eye closer to distracting elements. So I would have just done a dark vignette and, try to do it in a very subtle way so that it sort of helps the eye, look at the subject. It guides the eye to the subject, but it doesn't take over the image. You don't want it to be super, super obvious because that detracts a little bit from the image. I see lots of people that overuse vignettes and it just doesn't look good, in my opinion. So I can see, why you would use a vignette as a tool to guide your eye to the subject of the image, but I think that you would be better off with a darker vignette. Sean.
So this is a beautifully colorful wedding. I think you boosted the colors a little bit, and they didn't really need it. It was already colorful. And the angle this was shot from, and maybe there was somebody in the way or something, but her dress just runs into this decoration on the pews, and as a result, we end up with kind of losing the bottom of her dress. Another thing I noticed looking over at the EXIF data is that you shot this at 1/1000th of a second, very fast shutter speed, and 1000 ISO. So you could have lowered your shutter speed a lot and then been able to lower your ISO a good bit and gotten a slightly cleaner image as well. And this is another one we're shooting at f2 here. Really, you didn't need to shoot at f2. You could shoot at f4 and get just a little bit of a sharper image. You're not really going to get any kind of depth of field at this distance anyway with this image here.
Right. But I think it's also worth mentioning that, for me, I can totally relate to doing this. I don't know if this was a purposeful, or if your choice of shutter speed and ISO was on purpose. But if it was accidental, if you didn't realize that your ISO was at 1000, and so you just were trying to get your meter to read a correct exposure or a balanced exposure. I've done this before. I've accidentally set my ISO way too high and then had to compensate with shutter speed or aperture or something, and realized it after the fact. So it's something that you become more aware of the more that you shoot. So yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that, it may have been an accident, and I think we've probably all done it before.
Just something to watch out for. Thanks, Sean. All right. Under the Hastings Pier. So, a couple things. This is, a shot similar in idea to the one that I did in California about a month ago now. I love this shot. The kind of it's a very different feeling under this pier than the one I was at. And this is also done with a point and shoot, which is, again, my example or my discussion in that last podcast about, you're not really limited by gear. You can go out there and make these images with just any of the images I did, at least with just doing it. And let's see, so 3 seconds, I think a little bit longer would have smoothed it out in the distance a little bit. You can still see some shapes of waves, and I think it could have been a little bit stronger if those were just a little bit smooth. And the one pier right smack in our face right away, the one piling. I love that the flow of water around that, but I want to lean left or right. I really like to see this recomposed from either side just a little bit, just enough to get around that so it's not right in the middle. But really neat pier, really neat exposure. It has a very moody, kind of mechanical feel to it.
Vignette.
And we do have this pretty strong vignette down there. I think it's even accentuated a little bit more by the fact that there's more of the white water flowing right around that center pier as well. Yeah.
Yep.
Neat, Snapper.
Ooh, so I think this is another picture by Sean. And I like it a lot. I think that the light on this gentleman's face is really, really nice. And, and his expression is happy, which is how, any groom, I believe this is a groom, on, a wedding day should be. So, yeah, well done. This is a great, great groom picture.
It's nice. Really nice light coming in on his face. I think you said that. His pants are a little lost in the couch, but that's really just kind of nitpicking, and that's not the focus here, and the focus is his upper body.
Yeah.
And his pose is really nice and natural and nice. I like it.
Me too. Cool, and I picked this one because it's just a really cool picture. Oh, I just noticed all the flags on each chair.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool. I like the angle. I like the blue sky and the sharpness and crispness of the image and the composition. It's really well done.
Yep. And I think, I like too that it's not straight up and down, that we have a little bit of a tilt to it and it's kind of leaning into the image. I like that. This would also be a fun place to return to as the light levels dropped and do slightly longer exposures where you get maybe a little bit of blurring of this motion. But for this one, in a bright day, very nice, very crisp.
I want to add something before we move on to the next photo. I think this is one of the few examples where tilting the camera works, and there are some examples where tilting the camera doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't actually make an interesting picture. It just looks like everything's falling off to one side. And so this is tilted, obviously, but I think it works. So
yeah, I think because there's no horizon line.
Right, exactly, yeah.
That it works quite well.
Yeah.
Nice JTA.
I picked this one because I love the repetition. It's just really cool. I want to know what this is.
Yep. I even asked 4 days ago, what are we looking at? And our S snaps did not respond.
Tell us. I want to know.
It's neat. It's a neat picture. I think it's the bottom of bottle rockets.
I'm not going to make a guess because I don't have a very creative imagination.
It's a cool picture.
Okay, and so for our last picture is another portrait, and I like it a lot. I think that, the composition is very strong. The expression, like my eyes go right to her eyes. So, yeah, really well done. And it seems like the snow acts as a very nice natural reflector back into her face, back into her eyes, and it's really cool.
Do we know there's snow there?
Yes, we do. It looks like there's snow there.
Oh, okay.
Do you see the little catch lights under her eyes? I mean, that's either a huge reflector or a lot of snow.
Yep.
And just the fact that most of the light is coming from underneath, like right up into her eyes and her forehead and the bottom of her nose and the bottom of her cheeks.
The exposure here is perfect. And shooting at f2.8 I think was the right decision versus, again, a tendency when you get a lens like the 51.8 is to shoot everything wide open because, hey, I can shoot wide open and get razor sharp depth of field or razor thin depth of field. But in this case, that would likely, if the focus was on the eyes, as we suggested in one of the more recent videos, then that the fur collar to the hood would have been a little bit out of focus, and that probably would have been distracting. And so shooting at f2.8, perfect depth of field, nice exposure, nice image to end on. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, great. So as I said, I'll be adding some comments to more of them. Please keep adding your images. We are going to be doing this each week. I don't know if they always will be this long, but I thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Thanks.